Like that shit? We're gonna hang here for a second. You're welcome. Get funky. What's up, guys? My guest today is the one Vortex, founder of the CryptoCast network, puts out a ton of content on Bitcoin, has been in the space for a long time. Bitcoin Educator, Bitcoin Hyperbole, and this conversation was just an hour of nonstop enthusiasm about Bitcoin. So if that's what you're looking for, you're probably gonna like this show. Final note, if you're a music creator, you wanna hear your music on this intro, fire it over to me, I'll have a listen, and if it works, I'll put it on. Want to try to change this shit up a little bit, not get stagnant and not get boring with the same intro and the same music every single time. So if you want to hear it on the show, let me know, and we'll see what we can do. Anyways, that is all. Enjoy the show.
Let's do it.
Thanks for doing this, man. It's I'm excited. I was just been thinking about it all morning. Was just out for a run, and I was laughing to myself, like nothing better than waking up, having a coffee, going for a run, and then talking about Bitcoin for a couple of hours. You know?
Right, man. You can't beat that.
Yeah. So I mean, I know you've been at this for a while, and you got a ton of media output that you're doing, which I'd like to break into. But just for people that maybe aren't familiar with you and what you do, why don't you give them the rundown?
Yeah, absolutely. So, excuse me, man. All right, we're gonna get this. But yeah, so it's been it's been a long journey. Basically, I go by the pseudonym Vortex in the space. I've been in the space since I got in there for way back in there first from a Silk Road article on Slashdot. So I'm a developer and a web developer and a bit of a geek there. So it was already sort of coming across my purview on forums like Slashdot. So I found that, and I wanted to check out Silk Road to see if that was real, and holy crap, that was actually real. And couldn't believe it at first, so I wanted to take a look at it. And that's what really Silk Road is what introduced me into everything as far as economics, into Bitcoin, into the whole anarchist playbook, just everything you can sort of think of, just understanding life outside of the state, And that's really what brought me towards understanding more of Bitcoin. Because what I realized, of course, is Silk Road wasn't the invention, of course, right? So what the invention was Bitcoin, and so that's what I really started getting into and focusing on and diving into. And the more I dove into it, it just kind of sort of slowly, like everybody else, took over my life, exhausted the patience of my friends, family, wife, and so on. So at this point, this is basically all I can talk about. It sort of took over my Twitter feed around 2014-ish, 2013, 2014-ish, and then started my show in 2015 and brought that over to the World Crypto Network eventually, and then just in 2018 started my own YouTube channel, CryptoCast Network, and just sort of been in it ever since.
Wow. All right. Lots to unpack there. So, I mean, I think a lot of people resonate when you say, it slowly took over all areas of your life. Is that part of the reason why you got into media? Because it is for me, right? That I just needed to have these conversations with people, and there wasn't enough people in my organic life to be able to satisfy that desire.
So that's absolutely one of the main reasons. The first reason, though, absolutely by far, was the fact that just no mainstream media was covering it, and the ones that were covering it very, very poorly, very, very poorly, in my opinion. So I felt that I had to just. There's nothing else I could do except just try to go ahead and start talking about it, because I was inspired by channels like the World Crypto Network. That was really what inspired me the most. People like Andreas and of course Thomas over there, Mad Bitcoins at World Crypto Network. So seeing these shows inspired me. I realized that what, I have to get on a microphone. I can't stay quiet about this. This is something that is going to change the world, and I at least want to say that I helped a little bit in getting the awareness out there, because this is again just too important to humanity. Bitcoin has really taught me everything. I was already into computer science, but through Bitcoin, I dove into economics, finance, and really all the other areas that it sort of takes, like history as well, to sort of figure out what Bitcoin is in the context of what we have now and today. And of course, it is something entirely different, entirely new, entirely world-changing. And I just couldn't help it but wanted to be a part of the conversation.
And had you done media stuff before? Or were you just basically compelled to express yourself through this medium?
Man, I'm just a programmer. I'm just a geek. I'm just a web developer. I worked for a contract developer, freelance developer. So I worked for a lot of big companies. I worked for a lot of small companies. I worked for many. I had many different clients. And like for me, I've never did any type of podcast before that. Didn't even have a Twitter account really before Bitcoin. I only opened it to start doing some music stuff. And just a year later, bam, found Bitcoin pretty much. So. It was a it was pretty much a quick transition. It took over my life rather quickly. And so yeah, nothing no content creation, nothing like that before Bitcoin. Didn't speak to really anybody but of course my family, like every other regular person. It was didn't have any contacts, never started any businesses, didn't know anybody, nobody, definitely no quant or hedge fund manager on Wall Street wanted to talk to me, that's for sure. And so it was just regular life before Bitcoin.
Yeah. And where does Vortex come from? What's the meaning behind that?
So the name really is just my gamer tag,
Uh,
back from high school. That's what I've always used, and so that was where the name is from. The reason for the pseudonymous nature there is really because I saw sort of what was happening with the traditional finance and the traditional media world, where you're pretty much, you're just you get up there and you're a regular person, you have a name, you're just pretty much another face in a sea of suits. Like you're literally just another face, just another name, just another suit, in my opinion. And so I didn't really want to be that. I wanted to be something different, where I could be some type of symbol, and for Bitcoin, or a symbol for Bitcoin. Not maybe not represent Bitcoin itself, of course, but just something that is something that people can look at and be like, okay, you know what, that's something that I want to be a part of. And that is, for me, more important than trying to get on all the mainstream media and things like that. I figured if people would listen to somebody named Vortex, then they would really they would really be wanting to pay attention. They would be there to see like what the heck is all about. Because no regular, normal, sane person would ever listen to anybody anything had to say when their name is Vortex, right? So so I figured out that would be the way that I would come at this, from a media standpoint
yeah. And
and a personality standpoint.
one of the things I'm fascinated by on my own journey of producing content, uh, is the kind of the evolution of how you express yourself, right? And we all have a different perspective and have different ways of expressing ourselves. And I'm just curious, because you've been at it so long and you came at it from absolutely no media expression prior to that, which is my case as well. What's the journey been like in terms of like how has it evolved? How has the expression or how you choose to express yourself evolved, if at all, since you've been doing it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like with anything, practice makes perfect. You get better as you start practicing. You become more comfortable, and of course, any public speaking person will tell you this. It just takes practice. You just got to go out there, and eventually, you can be comfortable speaking to an audience of hundreds and then thousands. And it really all comes down to the same thing. It's a bit of confidence, a bit of comfortableness, and a bit of passion, right? So that's really the big driver behind me, again, is the message. And so yeah, it's been pretty crazy. I remember talking to Tone Vase way back in like 2014, and Tone had like 500, or no, Tone had 2,000 followers, and I had around 500. I'm like, man, how do I get to 2,000 followers? That would be some influence that I could be able to use to spread the word of Bitcoin, and try to get more information out there about Bitcoin. And so it's been a crazy journey. I guess you might excuse me, call me like a Bitcoin celebrity, or an influencer. But of course, I hate all of those names with the passion of a burning of 10,000 suns. So it's something that just comes with the territory of having a bit of a larger soapbox than the average person. And of course, I try to use that as much as possible. There's a saying, of course, that the higher you are up on the tree, the more the more people can see your ass, right? So I want to make sure that I don't just get an ego, get a fat head, or anything like that. Everything on the feed, on the Twitter feed, there is definitely aimed towards education, towards information, towards spreading awareness. And so, of course, I do my average. I have a shit post every once in a while, like anybody else, because I'm human. But really, the goal of the account is to try to spread awareness to Bitcoin, but not just Bitcoin, but why Bitcoin. And that's a really big important cause for me, and that's really what the account is about.
Yeah, well, that much is totally clear, man, because anybody listens to you for 60 seconds and they can feel the passion spewing out of you. Like the rate at which you articulate these things is pretty impressive. I saw, obviously I've seen some of your videos, and I watched a debate between you and another guy. I think it was done a couple months ago, or fairly recently it seemed. And
I think that might have been David Gerard. Sorry,
yeah.
the author of the 50-foot blockchain. Yeah, that guy's a no coiner.
Yeah, the guy with the octopus shirt on, right? Was that him?
Yep, that's
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
That's him.
yeah. And I just, like, every time it was your turn to speak, you were just like, boom, as soon as it was your turn. And so I appreciate that, and I can tell it comes from like a genuine passion and belief in this thing. And that's such a cool aspect of this space. And that there's always going to be opportunists, and to a degree, each of us are opportunists, because there's multiple reasons why we're doing the things that we're doing. But I just love how this thing that we're all dancing around, Bitcoin, is just inspiring us to be set on fire in various ways, whether that be podcasting, content creation, coding, education, writing books, writing articles, and a million other things that I'm sure are going to become apparent and come online over the next few years. But I just love I love the passion that this thing inspires. It's amazing.
It absolutely is. I mean, it's incredible. You go to the conferences and you see these people starting companies. You see people leaving their jobs for this business, for the space, for this cause, and for Bitcoin. And it's just amazing to see these people around the world all contributing to this open source thing. And of course, there's incentive, right? There's personal incentive, because Bitcoin uses greed for good. And it is absolutely amazing how it does this with its incentive structure and its game theory. And so, of course, I want Bitcoin to succeed for humankind, so we can actually have a new golden age of free trade. But I also want it, to succeed so that I am personally am better off, right? So that my family is better off, and so that my family's family can be better off, and my children and my children's children, and on, right? So there's this is what a part of the genius behind what drives the part of the genius behind Bitcoin itself, behind the protocol, behind the incentive structure, and all of the constituents that make up Bitcoin: the wallets, the developers, the miners, the exchanges, and the users. So it's really great to see all of these people chiming in, all of this work being done. I mean, you see people like Jack Mallers of the Zap wallet. You see the Mallers family, start to invest in this Jack in the wallet, the LN Zap wallet, which is just amazing because, of course, you can see now we're having fiat ramps on and off with wallet powered by the Lightning Network, thanks to people like Jack and his hard work, like a year-long straight pretty much of getting through the regulation and the red tape to have an actual competitor to something like Coinbase. So I can't I can't say that I just couldn't be more proud to be in a community of these type of passionate people, because at the end of the day, we're trying to build a better world here. We're trying to build a better money. We're trying to fix money. This is the generation alive right now that is going to fix money. That this is literally the time where we can turn it around and where we can start anew. This will be looked back as a turning point. It's basically going to be pre-Bitcoin and then post-Bitcoin world. Just like there's sort of a pre-internet world and a post-internet world. And really, Bitcoin is just this kind of third wave of the internet itself. It's just it's powered by the internet. The only reason why we can do all this, why I can express myself like we are right now on this podcast and everything like that, is because of the internet, the power of the internet. And really, so we have to really take it back to that, because this is the paradigm shift that brought us Bitcoin. And really, we have to look at it for parallels and for comparisons, with things like network effects, because they are both protocols. And so really, you look at the space and you see how fast it grows, and then you look at Lightning, you see how fast that's growing, and then you just you can make these comparisons to the internet itself, to mobile, to PCs, before electricity before that, and then cars, and then trains. This is a global changing technology, and of course going to be an end result of one of the world's largest, if not the world's largest, wealth transfers that mankind has ever seen. So this is an absolutely huge thing, and this is why people are passionate. People like Plan B that are putting out models like the stock to flow model. You just have all some people like Trace Mayer, the OGs, that are just been in the space forever and now trying to make huge amounts of change in Wyoming, just all at his own dime, right? I mean, this is nobody's paying Trace or Caitlin Long to go and make all these make all this amazing regulation, make all this amazing red tape, hopefully easier for Bitcoiners, right? Just make life easier for Bitcoiners in general. So yeah, I really, in my opinion, I can't see a better path for Bitcoin. Bitcoin is healthier and stronger than it's ever been because the community is healthier and stronger than it's ever been.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise a lot of great and exciting points there. But one of them, just to touch, to kind of put a cap on the way in which this thing draws people in. I mean, obviously there's several reasons, but you mentioned, this is a very pivotal moment in time, it seems. If we're right, the caveat is like, yes, it's definitely possible. We're all wrong. We're just kind of, idealistic, and we got into this and we thought it was one thing. It turned out to be another, and whatever. Are we really going to be shit on that much in the eyes of history for wanting something better? I don't think so, right? So, but if we're right, then it really is a pivotal moment in human history. And I think once you start to see what Bitcoin is, you go down the proverbial rabbit hole, you get to a certain depth, I guess. I think a lot of us start to think like, can I afford, in terms of the eyes of history, not to be involved in this? Like when I'm talking to my grandkids and they know I was around during this time and I wasn't excited about this. I didn't contribute to this in some way. I didn't help build. I didn't help develop. I didn't help educate. I didn't engage in it in some capacity in my own life. Like, that's going to be an embarrassing conversation if I have to say no to them. Like, no, kids, I didn't really, because in hindsight, if we're right, again, caveat, if we're right, it's going to be the most obvious thing ever. Because, people are going to look back at the existing financial system and the existing monetary standard we have now, and then compare it to, Bitcoin, and going to be like, like clear as day. Look at the tech, look at the attributes, look at the soundness of the money, look at the community built around it, look at how people were willing to devote their lives for free to contribute to open source project. Like, wasn't the writing on the wall? And if you got to tell your grandkids like, no, like, then I'm not willing to be that person, So I'd rather be wrong and, be labeled an idealist than be, wait, what am I saying there? I'd rather, I'd rather take the risk of being an idealist and being wrong than not having been involved in such a revolutionary thing. That might have not come out correctly, but you know what I'm saying.
No, it's absolutely true. Like, I mean, look, predictions are hard, guys. Like, if you look at all the '80s future movies, right? Look at them all. We're using fax machines in Back to the Future, and then of course in Blade Runner, the guy's getting charged per second for his video call by AT&T. Look, predicting the future is hard. Nobody, and I mean nobody, almost predicted the internet. Certainly not Hollywood. Certainly not a bunch of the futurists out there that claim to be futurists. And so look, predictions are hard, but there comes along these world-changing technologies that some people can see that some people can see the end result of, that some people can take to a logical conclusion. If we look at the internet, it is simply, if we look at it in hindsight, a logical conclusion to the telecoms industry. Started all the way back with the telegraph. This is the logical end conclusion, is the internet itself, real-time video voice communication. Next, of course, will be the holodeck. I suppose that would be the next of the VR experience will be the next thing. But still, you can see this, and then when you look at Bitcoin, you can see the similarities with these network effects. It is another protocol, and you can see that if it does do what the internet did, which is which is going to be free finance, like the internet freed information, then you can kind of put two and two together. Okay, well, the internet allows anybody to be anything, right? You can be a podcaster, you can be a DJ, you can be a journalist, you can be whatever you want to do. You can do that because of the internet. Even like producers and get all this great information. And now with finance, well, you can do whatever you want. You can be your own bank. You can invest in exchanges. You can invest in digital stocks. You can do all these things. So it is when you look at it to its logical conclusion, Bitcoin is this democratization of finance, like the internet was this democratization of information. And so to look back and not see those properties, I can understand it's difficult, right? We know that Bitcoin is this intermedium of all of these different disciplines: computer science, economics, history, finance, and just cryptography, mathematics, on and on it goes, right? So when we look back, we can sort of understand a little bit. But the people that are actually in finance, the people that are actually in computer science, absolutely. Like you guys, if you guys have missed Bitcoin, 10 years from now, you will be kicking yourself. And when we're talking about people like in finance, I mean, like fund managers and people and money managers, people are managing millions of dollars. Like, where were you? Where were you, bro? Like when we saw Bitcoin have the highest Sharpe ratio, when we saw Bitcoin stock to flow model, when we saw Bitcoin gains hundreds of thousands of percent from its inception, where were you? When you saw these properties of monetary soundness, the ability to have individual sovereignty, this finite cap, this ability to validate the entire network with a Raspberry Pi, where were you? Right? You're going to have to start. People are going to ask this question because this is your fiduciary duty to your customers to be able to invest in things and to be able to make them money and to be able to do your job. This is what people are going. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to look back and they're going to absolutely be very embarrassed. Just like there was a lot of people that looked back and was very embarrassed that they missed the internet, right? That they missed the .com, that they missed the Amazons and they missed the Googles. And even companies like Microsoft missed the internet. Right? Google took over. If Microsoft hadn't missed the internet, Google wouldn't exist. And so everybody misses something, right? So Microsoft missed the internet. Google missed mobile. Google missed mobile essentially. And then, Google missed social. And then Facebook missed mobile. So you got Microsoft missing the internet. You got Google missing social. You got Facebook missing mobile, and on and it goes. So everybody's going to miss something. That's the beautiful part about opportunity, right? And in this world, you can always find something if you're passionate about it. If you do your research and you look at something, you want to make a change. You want to help something. You can look at and find out all the different avenues to take. Bitcoin is one of these avenues. And again, we have huge people investing in Bitcoin at this moment. We have options markets, right? We have futures markets. We have endowments. We have some of the smartest people in the financial world talking about Bitcoin. So where were you? Yeah. This is a question that people are going to ask.
Yeah. And probably be especially unkind to people like Peter Schiff that not only, you don't have to say, where were you? It's like, what were you thinking being so adamantly opposed? But we'll see how it plays out. But that is one of the reasons why I think we all have this need to be at the frontier of this thing, because with something that's so new and so with so much potential, I don't think it's possible to see too much in front of your own nose, right? Like you might be able to see where a trend is going over the next year or two, but like if you said in 94, 95 that everybody was going to be their own media publisher and be recording, a huge part of their lives via Instagram stories or via YouTube channels and stuff like that, you would have been like, no, that doesn't even make, like, there's not enough bandwidth, and like people aren't going to want to do that, and privacy and transparency and all this kind of stuff. But, slowly but surely, that's what materialized, predicated on the fundamental attributes of the technology. And so I don't know what Bitcoin is going to turn into. And I talk about this all the time. Maybe it's overkill, but, these conversations are just kind of smashing together narratives and seeing which ones have the most gravity. And then we chew on that for a little while, and then maybe it morphs and changes. Maybe it solidifies, And there's several examples of that over the previous 10 years of Bitcoin's first 10 years. But, I'm just excited to be like at the front row seat. Like, that's why I'm here, because I want to be like, what the fuck is this thing? And it takes a lot of work to keep up, especially if you're going to be in the space and talking with people about this kind of stuff. And I'm certainly not the most informed person, on the technology or on what all this is, but I'm stimulated by it just because there's like it instills a bizarre form of faith where you don't know exactly what it's going to be. You just know it's probably going to morph and change into something that's really important, impactful, and a phenomenal tool. And I guess possibly because our generation has the internet to look back on and say, like, wow, that was a super, super big change. And it wasn't apparent at the beginning exactly how it would manifest 20 years down the line. And we have that right behind us to say we should probably consider Bitcoin in a similar vein. Like, okay, we know this is a big, big deal. We don't know how it's going to manifest in 10, 20 years, but it's probably worth our while in all respects, financial, reputational, social, to, be strapped in at the front and trying to keep up with this stuff as it moves.
Absolutely. And remember, we're all learning together. This is brand new stuff. This is a brand new paradigm. I like to say all the time that it's very early days, guys. Like, this is really, really early days. This is only the first 10 years. The first 10 years is the experiment. The next 10 years is when Bitcoin can really hop on that global stage. But this takes patience. This takes a time preference that is not suited to most people who are just living off that drip of paycheck to paycheck. So you really, once you start learning about Bitcoin, not only do you have to do your normal amount of learning, like something new, but it actually does, and it will shift your entire line of thinking around money, because money is so important. It touches every part of our lives. That means that everybody's affected by money, and most people don't even understand it. So we have to, we can't anticipate or expect every single person to be their own bank. Just like, not every single person today is a YouTuber either. But the possibility is there, the opportunity is there, and that is what is important. So this is what Bitcoin can do. So if even if you don't, like, I didn't invest in Amazon personally or Google, I was too young, but I benefit from their services every day. So the same will be true, with Bitcoin. But I think what you touched on is, we don't know what Bitcoin is going to become. It's impossible to predict, but what we do know is that it's going to be better than what we have. This is the fifth abstraction of money. This is the greatest form of money that mankind has ever seen. This is triple entry bookkeeping. This is a paradigm shift. This is a worldwide global heartbeat that goes off every 10 minutes, a state that the entire planet can agree on every 10 minutes. That is absolutely unheard of. This ledger that everybody, and I mean everybody around the world, can agree on every 10 minutes, that from that you can build an entirely new civilization. And this is the stuff that we start looking forward to when we start thinking about the future of Bitcoin. But again, it is so early. And so I always like to think about Bitcoin as far as its time history and its future in terms of halvings. So like 2024, where will it be? 2028, where will it be? And so forth. And if you look at it, we can see sort of this trend, a mini trends in Bitcoin, where it's going. And if you pay attention, you can sort of see, like, look, by 2024, governments have to be holding this stuff like they hold gold and like they hold other assets up, because the world will be settling contracts, and the world will be settling most everything, or a lot of things, in Bitcoin, because it's cheaper, better, and faster than the traditional system. Just like the internet is cheaper, better, faster than traditional systems like the phone line and faxes and so on. So when you look around 2028, and then you start to see, okay, well, now now multiple countries are involved in Bitcoin and have probably started some kind of currency, local currency based off of Bitcoin, backed by Bitcoin, and just on it goes. We as a species do want to continuously do better. We do try to do better, but we always experiment. We constantly experiment. Where the whole financial system right now, with negative interest rates and $17 trillion plus of negative yielding bonds, like this is an experiment. You think Bitcoin is an experiment? No, the traditional financial system is the experiment. So we don't know that we don't know what Bitcoin is going to become, but we do know that this experiment is going to lead to much better things than our current experiment.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people, I was speaking with Ben Prentice yesterday, who co-created the site. WTF happened in 1971, right? And I think that's such an important point, that the existing, monetary system is an experiment. It's a very radical one. And I think, again, looking through the lens of history, what's 50 years through the lens of history? It's nothing, Like when we look at historical periods, the Roman Empire or the Egyptian civilization or Sumeria, like 50 years is not, like, we don't even consider anything to have changed in a period like that. So, I think people, again, looking back with the hindsight of history, will say, like, wow. Wasn't that, I mean, what a short-lived experiment. And look at the damage that it did in the duration of time that it operated in. And look, like, I don't intend to be too negative, because I'm happy and healthy, and a lot of people today are more comfortable than any period prior. But I think, again, the drawback, the ways in which this monetary experiment kind of dampened human productivity and expression and creativity and production will be apparent in the future when we look back on it, especially through the lens of a far more productive monetary standard. So even though now, and that's the quote unquote tyranny of the status quo. We can't really, it's very difficult to see outside the times that we're in, and that's why history repeats itself, and that's why I was thinking about this the other day. We're so accustomed to perceiving reality through the lens of story, and TV and media is a big part of this, right? Like, we watch a movie, and the reason why we're sucked into it, and our brain tells us it's real for the time that we're watching it, is because it's told in story, and that's what we get every single time. TV, movie, TV, movie, TV, movie, and so I think a lot of people have a difficult time perceiving the real state of their material lives, reality, because it's not told in a narrativized story type of way. It's not condensed in the way that we usually receive these narratives, and as a result, I think it causes a lot of us to not perceive clearly the reality of our circumstances, and this allows us to maybe be taken advantage of in certain ways. This allows us to maybe be complacent and apathetic in certain ways. This allows us to not be as not be as disruptive about certain things as we might be, and many other manifestations of not seeing the reality of our lives clearly. And so I think, I think and we only do so in hindsight. It's only narrativized in hindsight. That's why people have such an arrogant view of history. Like, how come they didn't see that? And I couldn't. Why did that happen? I can't believe they made the same mistake again. It's like, well, because it wasn't part of the narrative of history in the current moment when it was happening. So it was much harder to see. So I agree. I think this current time in history, though right now everyone just says, "What? It's normal, isn't it? It's totally fine." With just a few decades probably of hindsight, the majority of people will look back and say, "Man, how the hell did we get ourselves in that kind of a mess? That was a real that doesn't seem to make sense."
It's absolutely true. I mean, people have to realize too that a lot of this is, of course, by design, right? We don't get taught financials in high school, right? We don't get taught about economics in high school, and even in the later schools like the colleges, you get mostly taught Keynesian economic theory and things that aren't very, very streamlined narratives that don't really go outside the box and that contribute to this idea of a fiat society, as Safety Dean likes to say in his book a lot in the Bitcoin Standard. We have a fiat society with fiat food and fiat art, and you look around and really everything stems from the money. This is why I believe that Bitcoin fixing money will fix society, because money is one of the most important parts and tools of society itself. So if we can fix money, we can essentially fix most of society. And this is what Bitcoin, one of the promises of Bitcoin is that if we can fix this money, where all the problems stem from, then we can hopefully fix all those systemic issues. And Bitcoin, for the first time, allows us to make sure that history doesn't get rewritten. Right. This is the first time where we can actually look back on the blockchain years and years. We can look back for centuries and potentially thousands of years and look back and say, have this history of transactions that cannot be altered. This is another first for mankind, to have this history that cannot be changed. This cannot be altered, because we all know, of course, those who can rewrite the history, right, control the future and the present. So this is another promise of Bitcoin, the fact that we can no longer rewrite history. This is really, really, really important economically speaking. And people, again, they're just used to this fiat type of way of life. We used to use yesterday's money to build tomorrow's future. We used to have families of generations of families contribute to an estate and grow an estate larger and larger and larger. This is just what was done. We used to think about time. Time moved slower, but we used to think about time much different. We used to think about decades into the future instead of just this every 2 week type of situation. For sure, this is a manifestation of this type of fiat world that we live in. And yes, of course, the world is better than it's ever been, and that's true. I mean, if you follow different Twitter accounts, you can get all sorts of different statistics about how the world is better, much, much, much better than we were, and it absolutely is true. It is far, 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 far better in many, many ways. A little bit worse in a couple others, but most of the ways it's by far better. But here's the kicker here. We cannot move any more. We cannot move forward any more than where we are with our current system. The current system has to go. We have to build something new, something better, something more modern, something that can easily lend itself and facilitate a global society, a space-bearing society, a futuristic society, a Star Trek-like society. This is what Bitcoin can sustain and can create and can promote. And so this is, again, another promise of Bitcoin. So we can't move forward unless we have a new paradigm shift, a new system. And I think Bitcoin is really the system that can power our financial system for the next 1,000 years. This can get us to the next level of society. This can get us to an M0, maybe class society, maybe perhaps one day M1. And this is, this is what forward people like Elon Musk are thinking about. What software developers like Bill Gates are thinking about. He was thinking about software on in every single home. Nobody was thinking about this. Bill Gates was thinking about software in every home because he was thinking about it like a tool. And Bitcoin is another tool of society that we can use to build the next level. And this is what we do. We stand on the shoulders of giants, right? We use the previous technology to build the next technology. And this is what allows for these exponential S curves in many of the technologies that we see today, like networking, right? Our internet keeps getting faster and our computers keep getting faster and so on and so forth. So we can see the paradigm. We can see the paradigm shift. We can see the actual trends and where we're going. And if we choose to use Bitcoin, if the world chooses Bitcoin, then we will, for the first time, have something entirely different, an entirely truly free world, free of tyrannical control from central banks, a world where anybody is free to transact with another. And that is a world, that is a promise that I can get behind. That is something that we can dream about. That is something that we can help bring into fruition. And that is something that I think every Bitcoiner has in the back of their mind as a possible future for this world.
Fuck. Yeah. Well said, man. What's before we go on, what's M0 and M1 in terms of types of civilization?
Yeah, so these are classes of civilizations that scientists classify as basically how much energy you can control. And the Earth is not even M0. We're not even zero yet. So as far as how much, because M0 means you can control a whole planet. M1 means you can control a whole star. I think M2 means you can control a whole galaxy.
Like you can like harvest the energy that
harness the energy.
Harness, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. Everything you just said was awesome. But what do you see the transition looking like? This gets, this is a subject of a lot of discussions because disrupting media was one thing, right? And for sure, I mean, media is such a powerful thing, as I'm sure you noticed in your capacity as someone who puts out content. And like any tool, can be used for bad or good. But media was and is an incredibly influential aspect of society, and certainly over the last 20 years, just the diversity of new points of expression, I guess we'll call them, that have emerged onto the system have really disrupted and diluted the influence and power of the legacy media system, right? It still exists and it still exerts a fair degree of influence. But, I mean, the amount of other people creating media and the amount of ideas that are just flying, through the air at any given time has exploded exponentially. And so, but the media industry, let's say, was a big, powerful industry, but the final boss is the money, right? The people who control the money. And so how do you see this transition from the experiment that we're currently running and the people that benefit from that, and the type of world that you were just describing?
Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of a rocky transition, like all transitions were. It wasn't such an easy transition, from horses to cars. It wasn't such an easy transition from traditional, candlelight to electricity and on and on. It takes a generation. This is generational changes. It takes the next generation to fully utilize the exponential technologies of the current generation. So it really is going to take some time. And again, I like to remind people, this is early days, and this will play out over decades. So it is going to be a bit of a rocky transition. As you know, the current system has so many holes in it. So the water is seeping in at this point. It's getting crazy. And so again, this experiment that we spoke about earlier is going sort of off the rails in insanity. Nobody really thought this was even possible, our current state that we're in right now. And so really that system has to die anyway, and that's going to be painful. So that's going to be a bit rocky and a bit painful. It's probably going to be anywhere between 6 to 12 times more devastating and costly than the 2008 world financial crisis, but nevertheless, it will allow us to get into the next phase, which is a much more positive phase. Because you see, the last bubble that we got out of, we just got out of by printing more money, by making a bigger bubble. So the next time, they're going to try to make another bubble. Of course, as always, they're going to try to make the traditional financial system, the central banking cartel, Bank of International Settlements. They're going to try to make another bubble, but this time, for the first time in humanity's history, we have a choice we have an exit sign. We have an option to be able to opt out of this current insanity that is this current financial system. We have an exit sign, and people will flee for this exit sign now that we have this option. I mean, it's just so much better than what we have now that when people find out about this stuff, they're going to actually jump ship. So, you're talking about disrupting media and versus disrupting finance. Absolutely, disrupting finance is going to be more crazy. I mean, if you think about it, what's more important to you, your email or your bank account? Right. It's absolutely going to be your bank account, hands down. So the money. So that's actually going to be crazy. But look, the kids are already doing this. We already have digital money. We've had gold in World of Warcraft for over a decade, right? So, the younger generations are already used to these multiple currencies, and many of the that come out today all have multiple, not one, not two, but 3, 4, 5+ currencies in these video games. And these younger generations, the youth, are completely and totally used to it. So, it's not going to be much of a huge change for them, but for the current generation, it is going to be a bit of a big red pill to swallow. It's going to be very difficult, and they're going to have to answer some hard questions about themselves. And we're going to see. It's going to be very interesting. We're going to see how it plays out, but it will be rough, but it will not last long because people don't. They want what's best. Ultimately, everybody wants what's good for their family and their neighborhood and their fellow humans, right? So ultimately, it will play out okay, but it's going to be a bit of a rocky transition. And Bitcoiners might even be hated for a while because Bitcoin might be one of the scapegoats that they're going to use as to why the traditional financial system is collapsing and things like that. But it'll be very temporary. It won't be very long. So again, a little bit rough for a little while. But look, we are stealing fire from the gods, people. This is not going to be easy. We have an uphill battle to go. This will play out over decades. So if you are at all worried about possibly all of your savings in Bitcoin going to zero, then you have to get out now, because this is an experiment, just like the traditional financial system is an experiment. But this time we have a chance to do something good, to do something outside the state. For the first time, have an option to have something, to have our own money and individual sovereignty of something that the state cannot freeze, control, or take away from you. So absolutely the final boss is basically the central banking cartel, the Federal Reserves and the Bank of International Settlements and these types of things. The International Monetary Fund, right? This is the final boss and the final battle. But ultimately, guys, look, they can't stop the world. Right? They're not the entire world. The whole world is going to choose this. Only 35% of the entire world is on the internet right now. There's going to be 1 billion more people online within the next couple of years. The youth is growing up with all these multiple currencies. The youth is growing up with crypto. I think that the transition will probably be smoother than most actually think it will be. But at the end of the day, this is a paradigm shift, and this is a generational shift. And really, we just won't know how smooth it went until the next generation is using this like it was here forever.
God damn it, dude. You got my heart going over here.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to keep it light here, but I just we're talking about Bitcoin.
I fucking love it. Yeah, man. I mean, fuck everything. Again, well said. And I wonder, that's one of the central questions that have been coming up recently is that to borrow the media example again, there wasn't as much pressure on the legacy media system, they weren't in threat of destroying themselves. There was just other alternatives that were coming up, and then they compete in the open market, right? So, for example, my mom still reads the newspaper. I don't know if the last time I've picked up a physical newspaper, but it's still available there because there's still some of the market. But with this transition, it could very possibly be the case that the legacy system destroys itself, right? And then people are actually forced to go to a solution like Bitcoin. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think that the innovation will be pushed out to the edges. We will flatten the world, just like just like the internet did with information. So it will flatten the financial world, and that by no means makes it smaller. Look what happened to the media industry now. It's bigger than it ever was because of the internet, thanks to the internet. And finance will be bigger than it ever was thanks to Bitcoin. So the internet gave us the world's largest shopping mall, the world's largest library, and so on and so forth. They will give us the world's largest financial market. And anybody, and I mean anybody, can participate, just like anybody can have an email address. Anybody can have a website. So this stuff is, you can't really stop at this point. You can't stop the train. The train has left the station. This is already the trajectory that we're going to go down. The only question is, how big will it get? How much will the world choose? How much of this Bitcoin silo that is currently empty will get filled up by value from these traditional assets? And look, you're right. Banks will still be around in some form, just like fax machines are still around, right? Just like you said, newspapers are still around. They're still around. But they are, for the most part, entirely irrelevant for modern working society. So that's essentially what banks in their current form, the central banks in their current form will be. They will essentially become, at some point, entirely irrelevant and replaced by something better, something faster, better, cheaper, something more accessible. And so this is essentially what happens is we trim the fat. So what happened with the media is with the internet, it trimmed all the fat and then rebuilt basically from the ground up, like just a whole new industry. And so essentially this is what will happen with Bitcoin, where the central banks, they're going to have to play by Bitcoin's rules, or they're going to have to get out. Right? So they're going to have to, participate in the mining. They're going to have to participate in the network. They're going to have to run a node. They're going to have to do these things because Bitcoin's not going, because it doesn't give you a choice. Just like, look, there's a lot of people that didn't like the change of the internet. There's a lot of people that didn't like the iPhone, but sorry, or smartphones. This is what the world chose. So no government, right? No government, nothing, no centralized party can stop innovation or can stop the flow of information in this information age. So at this point, really, there's no stopping it. So yes, there's going to be fat trimmed, but yes, they'll still be around. The industries will still be around, but they will be mostly relevant in their power and their wealth.
Yeah, you brought up a great point that I've contemplated as a result of a comment by American Hodl on my podcast, and that was that everyone hears these. Everyone's heard the. I don't know what the exact articulation of this is, but it's like more data was created in the last 60 days or 6 months than all of human history. That sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And because you mentioned that this new paradigm of media has has expanded. The entire market for media.
Exploded.
Right. It hasn't just like divided it up differently. It's actually dramatically expanded it because of the media that's available. And I think, I don't know exactly how it's going to play out. It doesn't really make sense in my mind, but you could easily see that when this sort of technology is brought to finance and money, and it's placed under the control and in the hands of people as media was, and the infrastructure is there to facilitate interaction in a similar way. His comment was like the same thing will be true. Like more value will be created in the preceding 6 months than all of human history. And like that comes into my brain, and I nod my head because I'm like, yes, I see the analogy and it makes sense, but I can't conceptualize it just because how could you imagine 6 months of value being equivalent to the entire human history of value, right? So it's kind of a far out thought that we can't really wrap our heads around, but it seems like it would be, there seems to be truth to it.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at these network effects. You look at what happened with PCs. You look what happened with the internet. You look at what happened with mobile. Bitcoin is going to be no different, and it will drive this innovation to the edges. Where, like I said, like you said, there's more media than ever, but it's not all going to these centralized corporations. It's actually spread out more to the edges. More. So now there's a bazillion YouTubers out there that are now taking a piece of that media cut that only went to a very, very select few. Same will be with Bitcoin, where we're going to have a lot of these same services, and it's going to explode in innovation, but the value will not be centralized and trapped just for a few people. It'll actually be allowed to flow to the edges, and this is what the information age and the internet itself allows: is innovation and value to flow to the edges. Really, Bitcoin is what allows value to flow to the edges, but it's the internet that first brought up that paradigm to allow the information to flow to the edges, and that is just really, really, really important. Again, it's going to be bigger and more spread out, but the value will not be concentrated to just a select few. It will now be allowed to really be set free.
Yeah. So obviously we're bullish on Bitcoin, but what do you, if any, do you see any not concerns, because as you've already articulated, the transition will be bumpy. But like, do you see any existential threats to Bitcoin's existence?
Really, at this point, like I said, Bitcoin is no longer um, um, something. It's no longer just a little school experiment. It's a much grander experiment now. At this point, it really is something that can't be slowed or stopped or shut down, just like the previous sort of global changing technologies that preceded it. But there are always some kind of threats out there to any type of new technology, because there's people that want to not see it succeed. So you have something like segregated internet that could be a possible threat that would slow down Bitcoin's growth and expansion if more and more countries just start, shutting off their internet to external countries, to other countries, sort of like China does with their Chinese firewall. But as you know, there's still always ways that information can flow in the information age. So that it would only slow it down. It wouldn't entirely stop it. So, beyond an act of God, I mean, like, beyond an act of God, segregated internet, and a bug in the code, really, there's just not a whole lot of threats that I see that could actually stop it. There's only a few things that could possibly slow it down.
And how does that influence you and your life, like in the way you interact with this? And the reason why that question came to my mind is because like your your energy, like I said at the beginning of this conversation, is apparent in the content you produce, right? And like and we talked about how that's being at least partially fueled by your passion for this thing. So what? Given that you see this big, amazing, thing on the horizon that is pretty much inevitable, how does that make you feel on a day-to-day basis, and how does that, cause you to kind of navigate how you want to be involved beyond
Sure.
what you're doing already?
Sure. So we, of course, already went over how I already exhausted the patience of everybody I know talking about Bitcoin, right? At this point, Bitcoin has absolutely altered my personality. It has altered my time preference, and really, I guess I was sort of primed for Bitcoin because I sort of saw the path that we were heading down, this tyrannical sort of, prison planet almost, if you will, where the entire financial system is strangleholded by a very, very select few. I saw that where that could lead us, and essentially, the trajectory where that could lead us down. It really wasn't until I got Bitcoin, like really got it in 2013, that I saw hope. Hope for humanity and hope for this planet. So for me, really, all my passion, all my enthusiasm for this project comes from the belief and really the almost knowing that this is a project that will change the world for the better. I was too young to be a part of the internet, but if I could, I would have probably done the same thing I'm doing now somehow with the early internet. This is just I guess part of my personality as far as trying to make light of or bring information about world-changing technologies. This is just something that's passionate to me. Like, so I'm all, obviously, like I said earlier in the podcast, I'm a geek, right? I'm a programmer, so technology is already something that interests me. But again, seeing that trajectory, being a technologist, and knowing that we could possibly change the future for the better, but not having any tool to do that, then seeing Bitcoin come along. Well, you can see sort of how I sort of lit up and got happy. Like, I was, this is something that, again, this is alien technology. This is something handed down, something that we just couldn't even possibly predict or foresee centuries ago. In fact, it was actually predicted by some of the early economists, right? Like Friedman in the 90s. But just, I mean, going back as early as the 70s, 60s, just there was just no way anybody could predict that we would be able to secure this type of financial system with just math, and on this information and in this information age. So, and to me, that's what gets me up in the morning. That's what excites me, is the fact that this is an amazing technology, and the fact that this amazing technology can bring forth a new golden age. That is really the source of my passion, and how that affects me on a day-to-day life. It just allows me to sleep soundly, right? It allows me to sleep a bit more sound, know that I have some value that I can save for my children, for my children's children, for my future family, knowing that the world is going to be in a better place because of Bitcoin, because of the internet. Just allows you to be happier in your day-to-day life. And for that, I couldn't be more thankful. And again, this is not just me who thinks this, right? This is the most of the Bitcoin community that thinks this way. So you multiply my passion, times millions of people. And again, with this early days, so you multiply that by millions more in just a few more years. This is why my hope is so strong for Bitcoin. Why I have this passion. Why I have this ability to, in my mind, see what could actually be the future, what could be. Because remember, everything physical comes from the non-physical. We all have to think about it first. Every single thing you see was created by somebody, right? So it was created by some being, some entity. So it was thought about, planned, created, blueprinted out, and then created, right? So this is how we create the futures. We think about it first, and we discover it, and we think about it. And it is through awesome podcasts like yours that we actually get to start sharing this information with others, and then others can hop on board, and exponentially it grows. So this is what I think is a cause worth believing in and a cause worth pursuing.
Dude, I fucking love talking to you. But that is actually why I asked the question, because in my, of course, for me personally as well, very much the same way. But in almost all of my discussions, again, people talk about behavior change in Bitcoin a lot. And I think so many of us came from, because Bitcoiners are probably are a little bit more curious than your average person, because we ended up, kind of seeking it out and for that reason. But being a curious person, it also causes you, as you said, kind of, when you come out into the world and you look out, prior to having a tool like this, you kind of thought like, oh, Jesus, like things are pretty fucked up. Yeah. And you find your way around that. You try to find a silver lining, blah, blah, blah. But, there's kind of a cloud hanging over things. And the fact that this entity, this tool has emerged and it's kind of been like the sun that parts the clouds, and you see the potential that the role that it might play in alleviating a lot of those concerns. Because I think that's a massive, massive component of this, because you look around the world today, and let's say the non-Bitcoiners, the no-coiners, there's a lot of anxiety, nihilism, unrest, hopelessness, and that has very material impacts on, obviously, individuals' lives, but the lives of society as those individuals, band together and seek to change things in other ways. And like you said, you sleep better, you wake up a little bit more excited, there's a smile on your face most of the time. There's a lot of work to be done, but you can it finally seems as though the fruits of your labor may actually bear fruit that that you think is meaningful and worthwhile. And so, I've joked before that an understanding of Bitcoin should be kind of an instrumental part of any kind of psychotherapy session, or people dealing with anxiety, depression, and that kind of stuff. And like I said it originally kind of joking, but if we dig down into it, I mean, what is the source of a lot of anxiety, depression, whatever? Of course, diet plays a role, past traumas plays a role, all that kind of stuff. But looking out at the world and thinking, this doesn't look good, I don't see my place in this world, and I don't know how I'm going to derive happiness or meaning from this world and this context and this circumstance that I find myself in. Well, if we kind of agree that that's a big reason why we're seeing a lot of the dissatisfaction and unrest and nihilism in society today, then a little red pill on Bitcoin would probably be a lot better than a little red pill of Prozac or whatever the fuck else is being prescribed.
Absolutely. I mean, it really all comes down to a lack of education. And that's what it all comes down to. If people only knew a little bit more about who they are, about why they're here, about the world itself, about what money is, about why we do what we do, they would definitely rest a little bit easier. There's just such a huge lack of education. We are just pumped right through that 12 years of school without even learning how to balance a checkbook, and then stuck right into McDonald's, serving up burgers. Like, there is literally no education on spirituality, no education on finance, no education on history, no education on astronomy, no education on even philosophy. There's no philosophy in school. Like, so how are you supposed to be happy when you don't even really know what happiness is? And so if you seek out this information, if you are a seeker, which some people are, some people aren't, you will find these things. But if you don't even know that they exist, how can you even start seeking? And so for me, like, when I knew about the current traditional financial system, and then I found about Bitcoin, like, I started seeking Bitcoin hard. I started seeking everything I could find about Bitcoin because of what I knew about the traditional financial system. But that was only because of of a curiosity that I then wanted to fulfill and educate myself, and could, thankfully, to the technology of the internet, thanks to the internet itself, where I might not be able to find this information in a library in 100 libraries if I tried to 100 years ago, right? So you have to, yes, obviously have the curiosity, but the internet now allows anybody to find out this information, to allow anybody to find out the secrets of the universe. Literally, this information is out there. You can Google this and you can find out this, because there's somebody that wants you to know. There is people out there that want you to know about how to balance your checkbook, about the history of mankind, about the history of this planet, about where we are, about what this physical reality actually is, because it's far, far more amazing and beautiful than anything ever depicted in a Hollywood movie, I assure you. And so when you start seeking this information, when you start getting this curiosity, and you present something like Bitcoin in front of somebody, that can really kickstart their curiosity, which can then kickstart their journey of seeking, which can then, of course, ultimately bring them where they need to be. And that is the key. That is the golden key. Is to have abundance, is to have whatever you need when you need it. And you can only do that if you are curious, if you do start to seek. And there's just the traditional system that we find ourselves in now doesn't make that very easy.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal point. And I actually think a lot about education, because when I was in school, I've always been like uber curious. And so I was always like, why the fuck are we learning this? This is bullshit, And so I would do a ton of extracurricular reading on a variety of different subjects just to scratch my own itch. But I think today, with the technology that we have available now, and that we will continue to that will continue to evolve in the future, I actually have a little note on Evernote, but I was thinking maybe doing a GitHub thing or something for like a curriculum, like a K to 12. Like what would it look like if you were like someone, you took a 5-year-old today and you said, what would the best education for them look like? What sprinkling of philosophy? What sprinkling of financial management? What sprinkling of emotional understanding? Because we're going into a future where, you're right. We're going to have access to, all human information and knowledge, all the information, everything. So, and we're seeing this today, I think, in many ways in society, in that we're no longer suffering from, lack of information or difficulty in obtaining it, as you referenced, before we might have had to go to 10 different libraries just to learn about, ancient Egypt or whatever. Now it's all at our fingertips. So the real skill is do you have the, the emotional stability? Do you have the sense? Do you have the ability, and whatever's required to have that ability to, to assess information properly and then make decisions or observe patterns or whatever based on that. So in school there should be, teaching about how should you be assessing information when it's so easily accessible and there's so many opinions and people saying various things in society. What should be your approach to decision making based on the available data? And we see this in so many things today, whether we're talking about the guns or the climate debate or all this kind of stuff. It's like, how should you be making decisions based on the available data? And if everyone confronting these issues really asked themselves that question, I think we'd get a much different response than what we're seeing generally in society.
Yeah, I mean, people are beginning to rethink education in this information age. But here's the funny part. Here's the kicker. We already knew this for centuries. We already knew actually teach our kids. It should be philosophy. It should be mathematics. It should be astronomy. It should be music. It should be the basics of all in history, the basics of all of these fundamentals. What has happened is that education has been turned upside down. It has been gutted. It has been perverted and reduced to this fiat education system where they only teach you the very, very basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, for 12 years. Yeah. And it's just absolutely insane. And so technically what we're discovering is that we already knew what to do. We're rediscovering how to teach our children because of the information age, because the information is now allowed to flow. We're starting to figure out, it's like, oh, wait a second. We used to teach our kids music. We used to teach our kids philosophy. People did this in Rome. This is what an average school day was. Wow. This is quite different from what we have today, and we can discover this now because we have the world's information in its entirety at our fingertips. So yeah, I'm hopeful. That's another thing. I mean, really, it's just the internet that allows and gives me hope for almost everything to do with the future of this planet, because that is where you'll find the truth. The truth is in the information, and thanks to things like the internet and Bitcoin, we can now actually find and discover the truth for ourselves, it can no longer be hidden entirely. The internet is going to and continue to bring light to the darkness in this planet.
Yeah, totally agree. Dude, how much time do you have left?
I think we can wrap it up. I got to get going.
Okay, I'm just gonna finish off. I won't ask you the typical rapid fire questions, but I'll get the word association out of you because the other ones might take 10 or 15 minutes. But I'll just do this one quick. It'll take like two seconds. So this part, I just say a word. You tell me the first thing that comes to your mind.
All right, let's do it.
Satoshi Nakamoto.
Freedom.
Government.
Oppression.
Hash rate.
Truth.
The individual.
Everything.
Security.
Need more of it.
Ego.
Prevalent in everybody.
Greed.
What drives us forward?
Stacking sats.
Intelligence. IQ test.
Fiat currency.
Control.
Guns.
Freedom.
Altcoins.
What do you call it? Penny stocks.
Pizza.
Love.
Socialism.
Confusion.
Family.
What do you call it? I had a word in my mind. Now I just forgot about it. Something supporting. Support. Let's do support.
Trump.
Trump. Hilarity.
Future.
Bright.
Libra.
Control.
Bitcoin.
Freedom.
Man, I'm sure we could speak for 3-4 hours, so we'll have to save that for another time because we barely took a breath that whole hour, and I really enjoyed it, man. I knew this was going to be a good one, but just a great way to start my day for sure. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. I wish it could stay longer, so I really appreciate the time. Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll do it again for sure. I can already tell. But is there anywhere you want to direct people or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can definitely find all of my work at my website at the1vortex.com, all spelled out, the1vortex.com. And the majority of my thoughts, of course, are placed on Twitter over there at the1vortex, all spelled out again. And that's where you can find everything from the CryptoCast YouTube channel to all of my appearances on other podcasts like this one here. And basically all of my thoughts are put on Twitter at this point. So I do, again, try to keep the feed to have to educational and have a lot of information because there's just so much great information out there. I discovered a lot of people out there, like Plan B and other projects that and ideas that hopefully more and more people can learn from and expand upon. So that is really what the account is about, and I encourage everybody to check it out.
Awesome, man. Well, look, keep up the great work, and I look forward to our conversation sometime in the future.
Thanks so much, man. I had a great time. Thanks.
All right, brother. Take care of yourself.